episode 7 of The Good. Welcome to The Good podcast with myself, Taya Bonicos, and today I have an amazing guest, Tonje Thorsen. Tonje, welcome.
Thank you.
And Tonje is an incredible human being that I got to know through our kids, which happens with the mom life context. But what's interesting is, I think for me, we really clicked in your retail background and my path in fashion, and then another level of it was self-development and inner harmony, balance, and that joy in life.
Yeah.
That you've shared some bits of it that you found through, as often happens, some struggles. And I would like to just get into it a bit and share your story. So tell me, Tonje.
So first of all, Taya,
Okay.
Thank you for having me on this podcast, The Good. And like you said, I felt also this instant I think the word for me would be we had a vibe. It was very easy to talk to you. It was very easy to be with you, and just we had similar interests with retail and self-development. So it's really nice to sit here and have a chat.
Thank you.
And then for me, I'm Tonje, and I would say in a nutshell, I'm a very curious person. So now I'm in a chapter of my life where I kind of have ripped a lot of stuff up, going through experiences that really took me to the depth of a lot of stuff. And then now I'm rebuilding and finding my own passion and where I want to go forward in with my life and my career, and just living in a more authentic way, I would say.
I think also what's interesting, I love the word curious, by the way. And I think what's interesting for the audience, especially, is it is English language podcast. And we are based in Oslo, Norway right now. And I have different guests of different background. I think just as we get to know your story a bit more, so your background is you born in Norway.
Yes.
Very Norwegian.
Very Norwegian. So maybe compared to other guests that you've had, I'm very Norwegian. So just my mom, my dad is Norwegian. We kind of always had this feeling maybe some Portuguese, Italian, Spanish people fled into the country and found our grandmother or something, but who knows? But yeah, very Norwegian, and I'm from the west coast of Norway, so I have a dialect. I speak with much more French R than most people here in Oslo do, and I've been in Oslo for almost 12 years now.
Which is longer than I've been in Norway.
Yeah. But yeah, so I moved here because I started studying. So my background is in finance, of all things. And I moved to Oslo to study. I mean, I remember so this was back, we're going 20 years. And it was a shop at a really big shopping mall called Kvadrat, which is very big from where I'm from. And there was this shop floor where it had a big entrance. So you would always see people coming in, and you would kind of have all of these clothes. It was, clothes for young girls, young women, teenagers. And I would stand at a table, and I would fold, let's say, sweaters or something like that. And then I would see people come in, and I would observe how they would walk in. Where were their eyes going? Were they looking at me? Were they anxious? Are they kind of avoiding me? And then I noticed a little cues, like if you say hi, that's what everybody says. So immediately they would be hi, and shut down. Mm-hmm. But if you just said hi, it would kind of lead the interaction open, and they would be a little surprised and then say hi and then walk in. But it was kind of you made an opening. They didn't shut down immediately. And then from there, it was all of these little cues. If you would just stand and wait, it would get a lot of pressure on the people coming in. But if you were occupied, cleaning or just making busy, it was so easy to get into conversations with people. And you can apply all of this. I was 16 at the time, and I've used this at parties as well. You can see if you have a real like, hi, how are you?
Hi.
Yeah, you don't want to talk to that person. They seem very desperate, and in stores, people are the same. You can smell desperateness. So the more kind of laid back and busy and cool you were, and not in a nonchalant way, but just all of these micro interactions. I just fell in love with how beautiful their experience of coming to the store became by listening and watching and observing what they were needing, instead of going from it like, I need to sell you stuff.
That's such a beautiful part of it, but also there is a lot of psychology.
A lot, yeah. I didn't know that at the time,
but that being able to observe, understand, and this is something I've also shared with one of my first big, I would say, jobs in the UK and it wasn't my first language and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I had this 1 year placement in the most luxurious shopping center in Harrods, and my first degree was hospitality and international hospitality management. So it was all about service part of things. And the reason why I'm saying it is until you kind of face the customer and do it again and again. It feels so odd. It's like personally, for each person who starts that career path, it's like, oh, so what? And then you see the pattern. And then after you've done it many times, you see the cues. And then you can and then interestingly and then I've done different things, but then in Norway, when we had a pop-up in Stenström, which is one of the biggest in Oslo, well, not biggest, but I would say the most luxurious shopping centers. And for me as a business owner, it was a amazing opportunity to be next to the big guys like Loewe, Mont Blanc, and to be there. That's exactly where I needed to be with my brand. And but as an entrepreneur, it's like I don't have a huge group of people, retail professionals. So it was like, okay, well, I need to establish the contact, and I'm standing in front of the customers, and then I feel like, oh, so how do I sell this luxury bag without bring the attention to me, but without being awkward, jumping on them. So it's a wonderful thing of psychology that makes you dive into your own, which I understand you did a lot of it, 20 years.
Yeah, I was 16 at this time.
That time.
And you get, it's exactly what you're describing. You have to really face your fear of rejection. And so many people, just walking in the streets, meeting people at the bus. What do Norwegians do? Seeing someone they know at the bus? They're like,
this is so
because
odd.
It's small talk. And what you do in a retail store, you small talk with everyone. And you are exposed daily. It's your job to be exposed to rejection. So every day for 8 hours or more, you get rejected if you're bad at your job. And this is what I find so fascinating, because once you learn those little cues, you start interacting with people. And then when you master all of that, you connect with people. So at first, it's kind of a layer where on the top, you just have to get used to not being fearful of the rejection, right? You realize that it's not me. It's a setting. It's a skill set I haven't learned, and it is awkward because they don't want to be sold to, and my job is to sell to them. So how do we do this, right?
But they're coming possibly to buy.
Yeah, so they are there, but they don't want to be sold to. They want to buy.
Like relationship.
Yeah,
like
it's a little bit like dating, right? You go into a party. And you see somebody like, okay, let's see. Oh, it's a nice, cool party. You go in, right?
You're dressed up. You obviously kind of.
And you kind of, okay, I'm gonna check this out. Yeah. And then if you go in there and people, one person will be like, hey, it's a nice party, right? And they kind of small talk with you. It's easy. There's no pressure. And you can kind of say, yeah, I see my friend. I'm just going to go over there and say hello. And maybe I'll see you later at the party, right? It's an easy interaction.
Yeah.
But if you go in and there is a person that just immediately takes you and be like, hi, do you want to marry me? Right, that's what usually a lot of retail people will do. They will be like, hi, what can I do for you? How do you need help today? And people will immediately be like, leave me alone. I don't even know what store. I don't know what party I'm at. Am I at a tech party? Are we doing slow dance, right? You don't even know. And they want to kind of get something from you immediately. So there's all these interactions that I kind of fell in love with. And also because I had the privilege of making it a long-term career without intending so, because there's so many people that go into retail and it's this, they step in as a part of their real career goal. So they do it to make some money while they study for their real career. Mm-hmm. I stayed in there for year after year after year, and this became my career. And so I had the privilege of also seeing that side when you know, you can meet, I still meet people 10 years later and they'll be like, I remember you from that store this day. We talked about this and we had a nice interaction or a connection. And one of my dearest best friends I met through work 20 years ago. And it's just all of these wonderful connections and interactions with people that isn't online. Right,
which is a very good point, because now I feel, especially with the younger people, which I find, because I have, with the younger people that we come across, but I also have a stepson, 2 stepsons, and they're like 20, 22, and I see we have so many talents, but the pattern in their group of generation, everyone, the way they communicate is through...
It's digital.
Digital, yeah. And when they're in the setting of facing a person, it's just so difficult for them. Suddenly that for, I would say, for our generation, all they're just natural to talk, call, not a big deal.
Yeah.
This is a huge deal.
Yeah.
I'm in front of the real person that I don't know and I have to talk to.
Yeah.
And I think it's back to the point of the retail, bringing that real conversation into your life, even though perhaps it's not personal, even though it's maybe your work, your job experience, your first job experience.
Yeah.
And then it gives that super skill that you don't realize later that you have. And with, tell me about, so have this, because I feel I want to unpack the career path, which is interesting, and get to what you do, but also your personal journey of finding yourself through the adversity, through the good times, through motherhood, through difficult times, and what are the tools that you have. So with, I think before we get to your current thing, I think we need a bit of more context.
Let's dive in.
So you've been with your partner since you were 19.
Yes.
And you share part of career path.
Yes.
Somewhere in the retail. And then you have Albert, who I met.
Yes.
Albert is 6.
Yeah, turning 6 in the summer, yeah.
Turning 6 in the summer. How did motherhood change you when you became mom, and your personal self, and where you were with the passions and excitement of retail, of the things that you understood and saw for yourself? How was it?
So how did motherhood change me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think motherhood is like it switches something in you that you didn't know existed. That's the feeling I have. Like, it was as if everything inside of me had been just turned upside down and shaken and then thrown around. So all of this wonderful stuff I was hearing, everybody was just so joyful and like happy-go-lucky. Even going pregnant, I felt so much of this type of planning pressure. So for me, I've always been terrified of giving birth. That was my big. I was afraid that I would go up to my term date and then be like,
No.
no, let's not do that.
Yes.
So I steered away from all information. If people, I think we deal with insecurity or how do you say, when you're not sure of how it's going to go. It's not insecurity, is it?
I would say something unknown.
Yes,
Kind
the
of
unknown.
The unknown.
You can deal with the unknown either by just surrendering, or you can try to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
My approach was, I'll just surrender. I will surrender. I will just trust the process. And I was surrounded by people who wanted to control everything and give me as much information as I could possibly have about everything that was going inside my body. And it was a weird experience to have to put boundaries up and feel the pain inside of you. Be like, this is actually damaging for me to be around. So my first impression, kind of growing into becoming a mother, was that, okay, this is.
I have boundaries.
I have boundaries, but I'm not ready for this. But then. Kind of doing, giving birth and then having your child. Our start was a little bit difficult as well because Albert went to the intensive care. He was sick. So I remember walking in. Did you give birth to Daniel here in Ullevål or
in Ullevål?
Yeah. So there is this hotel.
Yeah.
That after you give birth, you stay at a hotel, and then. The first night I had to be alone. So my partner was sent home and I was alone. I was confused. And then suddenly during the middle of the night, they said, now you can go to the hotel. So I was in the hotel alone. And I just remember waking up wondering, where is my baby? Like, I was crying. I was confused. I was walking in the hallways, like searching for him. I was so confused. And I remember I felt so naked and just raw. And I just uncontrollably crying, and it was, I couldn't recognize myself. And so in the following weeks and months after that, it was, I think I struggled with the postnatal depression. But since I was so much alone, nobody kind of knew. It was this health worker that saw it and said, okay, the baby is more than fine. So we need to take care of you now because you're really not doing well. She could just look at me and I would burst into tears. And the baby was so happy and fat. And, he was, because I was pouring everything into him, but I was just neglecting myself. Yeah. And to me, this motherhood it changed everything because this is when I started my first company. I also went through the company I used to work for was shutting down. So in the middle of me kind of, maybe I should start something on my own, I also had to deal with a lot of stuff behind the scenes it was difficult. And it was kind of the make it or break it point where I decided that, okay, I am done working for somebody else and I am going all in on my own. It was this leap moment. And motherhood is also what created this business. So the first business that I started. So it kind of felt as if I found something new. I don't know if snakes, when they grow, they change their skin. So it's a painful process, but you have to do it in order to actually go into a bigger size of yourself. And also this phoenix, so you kind of burn to the ground and then you rise. Rebirth. Yeah, I think this is it feels like a rebirth. So motherhood to me felt like a rebirth. You kind of discovered a really feminine beast inside of you that I didn't know I had. And it set a path and a meaning for my life where I have just been following the flow. And now suddenly I was like, I know what I want to do. And then suddenly everything cleared.
And then you had this business that we talked about.
Yes, and that was the best. So the business kind of was born as my son was born. It feels like.
And it was around, and it was for first-time moms.
Yes.
Which was also retail.
Yes.
Because you created your own space and shop, and
yeah,
which is very cool and brave, considering I know you worked in that, but to make that step, okay, I'm going to be a mother and I'm going to run my own business and I'm going to start up a shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well done. I mean, I like that.
Thank you.
And through that experience, I know you also, I mean, the things when I look into your Instagram and things that you post and that are important, you also do a lot of training. And I feel, at least how I read it as an audience from the message is like, there is a process if you change and you can find the inner strength and the tools. And I feel like the tools that partially you share are also the training part of things that help you to go through the changes. So what do you do with training? What's your approach?
My approach to training?
Yeah, what's your usual? Because the reason why it's important, the detail. I know it's very normal and usual for you because that's what you do. But for someone discovering and thinking, okay, well, maybe yes, maybe I need to, like with birth, there is something physical about it.
Yeah.
It is a rebirth. It's also a physical act on your body that you have to live through. And in the same way, sometimes with change, when you need to make change as from where you are now as a human to something else where you want to be, there is some action that you want to take.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a very basic physical, like I'm going to go to gym. So as a role model and somebody who lived through those experiences, what do you do now to keep your inner zen, do things? How many times you train? What do you train?
Okay, so there's a lot of questions within the questions, but
let's do just overall.
Okay,
like, to keep your zen.
Yeah, what do I do?
How many times? And yes, what do you do?
Okay. Well, first of all, I now is very different from 2 years ago. So I can talk about now first, and then go a little bit backwards to give sort of the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's very easy to see somebody who is at their kind of peak when their habits have already been implemented. Mm-hmm. So now I train between 5 to 7 times a week, and I do strength training and running. Mm-hmm. And then for restitution? I
don't know.
Well, recovery, yin yoga, and then just walking.
Yeah.
But this wasn't me, 5 years ago and 3-4 years ago. So it's kind of an accumulation of a lot of habits over time, and then also a bigger picture. Like, I mean, if you have 3 kids and you work full time and you have your own business and you do all of this, you're not going to have that type of time to train and do all of these things. And I mean, it's just not possible if you're also working, let's say you work for somebody else. So to give a bigger picture, I've trained a lot of, I put a lot of time into training now because I've had a lot of time, mm-hmm. because I'm also dealing with the burnout. Mm-hmm. So just to kind of make it clear, because I think when you see on my Instagram, it can be, training and all of this, like, it's one part of my life that was positive during the past year. So this is where I kind of had my mastery from when mm-hmm. everything else fell into pieces. So the last year, I've been kind of just getting my energy back, getting Tonje back from, she hit the wall. There was depression. I figured out I had ADHD at 35 years old. I didn't know that. I think a lot of other people knew that, but yeah, so there's been all of these. I mean, you don't change as a person, but you kind of discover layers of yourself during this process. So training for me has been a way of kind of having an anchor. I look at it. You have an anchor, it gives you mastery, you kind of find a feeling of who you are, and you just stick to that. And then little by little, different things figure it out as well. And then for me, training is usually a physical manifestation of how you respect and treat yourself. So when I look back in the years after giving birth, I think I was like 40% up in body weight, and it just stayed there. I was miserable. I felt like every day I had to put on clothes. I was just like, oh, it doesn't fit. Who am I? My identity was kind of gone because I was always this fit little girl that could wear cool clothes, and then suddenly I didn't feel at home in my body, and it was colliding with, in my world, I wanted to say like, yeah, but this is me. I want to love me for me. I want to be accepting of who I am. And then at the same time, I just didn't feel at home. I didn't know who I was. So training for me became this, like once or twice a month, I would go to a body pump class with my friends and just do that. That was the start. And then from that, I started wanting to run a little bit more, and then run more and go more on body pump, and then train a little bit for myself. And then when you find something that you like, it kind of just fuels itself. I think a lot of people have a relationship with training where they hate training, they hate dieting. I don't do diets, and I love training because I love the way I train. So it's kind of from also finding a passion where it works, and the body changing is just a byproduct of all the little habits of where you find joy. If that makes sense.
I love that. And in a sense, yes, you need to start somewhere, depending where is your starting point. Maybe somebody was a professional athlete, or somebody never tried to go to gym before.
Yeah.
And I think it's like this little stories, and why I think I wanted to know a bit of detail. It's sometimes even emotionally, people listen to podcasts or information, but even that step or something they can imagine, almost like a mental, somebody's taking you by hand, and like, what, that's how that can be.
Yeah.
That's how it was for me. And you need to start somewhere. And I had another guest on podcast here, and we just covered the topic of how that physical gave a lot of strength to deal with all the other stuff that was really, really difficult, and otherwise kind of would have led to both depression, like just unable to handle.
Yeah.
Because there are some times in life, and I think especially at this age, when you kind of already, maybe some, in average, let's say, some people already have kids, and then maybe they have also aging parents and all of the other career opportunities, and then so many things you have to manage and have the inner strength to show up no matter what. You wake up when, and again, not to touch the fact that I also know the struggles people go through wanting kids and not having them, but like, let's just touch on the parenthood when you are in that drill. There is also reality. It's like, there is a day you just like don't feel like you sick, exhausted, etc. Whatever it is, you need to get up, show up, get dressed, and you need to have different tools to have something fueling you, as you said. So ideally something self-sustainable machine that just works automatically. And I feel like training or that physical can give you that, just another source of energy to, what, I'm well, I'm healthy, I have energy, and I can just push a bit more, and I can keep going. And I personally find, in my experience with my day-to-day, it helps. I've heard many women who also at some point, especially when it's, for some people it's a already well-trained routine, but for sometimes when you kind of didn't have that tool and you need to discover, it's a wonderful thing to remind, if you don't have it yet, just try and explore it for yourself,
Yeah.
because maybe there is something there, because I feel through so many people who do that, it just, there is a aha moment with different things. And as you said, could be gym, could be whatever it can be, skiing or other stuff. It is source of energy.
Yeah, because to me, the way I train, it's play for me. It's my adult version of play. And I think when we find that, like for you, running, right? I've seen you run so many times on your Instagram, and you always have this big, happy smile on your face. Because it seems to me as if you found what you like to train. So we call it training, but when you're a child, they're in activity all the time, and this is their workout. They don't work out, they go oh, we'll go and train with my friend now and run around in the streets, right? But we call it training, and so we kind of limit it. And what I noticed during this kind of journey, I would say 1-2 years, especially last year, is how many women I've encountered, and how you realize how many privileges you have. So for example, I grew up and I was playing handball and football. I was up until I was 18 years old, 19 years old, I was doing handball almost every day, sometimes twice a day. I was really going for, my dream was to be a athlete on the national team, and I was really, really going for being a professional handball player. And so I had the privilege of growing up, you had training sets, you had to show up and do your work, but it was set for you. And now as an adult, I talked to people, and I noticed, and I wasn't even aware of this. One of my friends, she said, yeah, but you still have the privilege of being taught self-discipline as a young child. And there's so many children growing up that aren't put into places like this, where they have to show up for practice. There is a community keeping them there. So when they grow up as adults, they don't have this self-discipline naturally working for them. They have to teach themselves from the bottom, from nothing. And I have such a big respect for this, because I think it also touches on the fact that it is very difficult to just start training, start being self-disciplined if you've never had it as a younger child or teenager. So this is one part. And then the second is that I didn't know how many women who has such a difficult relationship with food.
Oh yeah, that's a big topic.
Yeah, and I didn't know this because I was the child that I was so skinny. I was struggling to gain weight. I could never eat enough. So I never had that problem. And I always felt bad, because I heard so many of my friends were like, it was allowed to say, why are you so skinny? But nobody could say, why are you so fat? So I kind of had the okay, just let's not talk about this. But I realized that, okay, so as an adult, I saw all of these problems coming back in, right? So training, they had a really difficult relationship with training, because it was associated with body and losing weight, to fit clothes, and to eat really poorly to fit clothes. And I just found it so heartbreaking, because what had been this lovely thing for me growing up had been a hell for so many other people. So now that I see this journey of training, to me, it is, I see it as a way where if somebody says like, hey, can I come train with you? I'm like, yes, of course, come with me. I will teach you everything I know. And hopefully you will find a way of training that you love yourself. Because when you strength train, the beautiful part is that you can basically eat as you are, or as you do. You start strength training more, and you will naturally just build muscle and lose fat. And now I feel like I've gone into lots of different areas, but I think the point was that training to me has become this tool of finding my own strength, finding the self-discipline within me, and then kind of showing people going from where I was to where I am now, that it is possible. But you have to find it in a way where you enjoy the process. Otherwise, it's just going to be painful and horrible.
I love that, and
I don't know if that makes...
I think you've really touched on very important points, especially the food, which I've never talked much, and I personally, as someone who I always been like a kind of, I was good. I used to be training as like professional figure skater as a kid, and I always did a lot of activity, but my diet was so poor, like chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. So I was always like, and in Russia, it's a big, you need to look fantastic. I mean,
there's a lot of pressure.
Everyone looking fantastic, and everyone is doing their best. And I always felt like I'm a cow. And my mom has always been like this ballet dancer, super sport woman, and it's like, it's a life journey of a relationship with food.
Can I ask you, it might be, let me know if it's too personal, but when you grew up, did you hear your mother talk a lot about her own body, what she could and could not eat? Was it a restrictive relationship with food, or was it, how was that?
It was, I would say, opposite to a degree. There was a lot of conversation about the body, but the basically body is sport and activity, and it was all like super active. She runs marathons now. I don't know, she just in past 3 years ran like 30 marathons, and she started running only 4 years ago. No, that's a new thing for her.
That's cool.
So it's like she's a super physical person, but she's still the person. She understands nutrition more, but at that point as a mother, like no emphasis, understanding. She never cooked, never nothing. And then they split up with my dad, who really always been present in my life. But, in reality, when you live with your mom, it's like at the end of the day, somebody is going to put food, probably your mom, and she doesn't cook. So it will be either some burger or chocolate. So I love chocolate. So it's a chocolate. So every day I can eat like 4 chocolates a day in one go. And then I went into that pattern of, okay, well, I need to lose weight, so I'm going to not eat 1 chocolate instead of 4. And you have this all crazy. And it's physically, unless you understand the nutrition, and which was a really slow process of understanding for me. So it's a huge journey, and I really resonate with many how you do it. At some point I was like maybe 30 kilos heavier than I am now. So, and I always was aware of body image, not that I was like happily, I'm cool with it now. I was never cool with that. So I think it's a cycle, and it's a complex thing, and it's definitely a big topic. And then back to retail and fashion. And it's like, whoa, in the fashion and retail, you're showing up, you want to feel good. You don't want to feel fat. Your clothes and all of it's kind of on one hand quite small, but then it's like fundamentals. If they are wrong, everything else is so difficult to do. So thank you for the question. I think to bring it back to you, and
we are.
I know, but that's the beauty of it. So the audience get to know you, I get to know you more with what you're doing now. I've heard about High Five. So what is it? And why it is so important? And I can see your eyes are just brightening up. So tell me about it.
Because I always like to give a little bit background. So now I've created a company called the High Five Culture Lab, and I have started a podcast called the High Five Mindset. And you might guess I'm a very big fan of high fives. Yes.
That's good. Love it.
And then this is actually also going back to my childhood. Like when you're in a sports team, you grow up, and I was a very fast person. I was doing a lot of goals in the football field and the handball field. And that feeling of just putting a ball into the net, and then your arms go up and you meet your teammates, they're happy, and you're just doing high fives everywhere. So a part of me the last year, I kind of realized during all of my workouts, because I was training with one of my closest and dearest friends, and she noticed that, oh my God, Tonje, you love high fives. And I wasn't aware of this. I call it my gym love language, because she always gives me the high fives, and I'm just... It's just filling me up. So I thought, yeah, this is actually a way of thinking and living that I love, because there's so many people who have this type of mindset. And it's this energy of a high five that just feels uplifting. You get energized because there are two forces and it can't disappear. So it kind of synergizes or creates this synergy where you go,
Extra,
right?
extra,
Yeah, like,
extra
yeah,
spark.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
So then I thought, why not just have this type of high five cultures in businesses? This is what I've been secretly dedicating my entire working life to. So I've been doing a lot of marketing, and I've had my own business, and I've been doing content creation and buying and leading teams. But the one red thread that I saw during all of these years was I love culture building and the feeling of being a really good team, having a leader that takes responsibility and ownership and really knows that I am the coach, the team, the captain. Everything the team does or does not do reflects back on my leadership. And to me, it just became so obvious that, okay, I've had the privilege of working with good leaders, and I've also had the privilege or joy of working with bad leaders. So I've seen the good and the bad. And over all of these years, all of these, books I've read and reflections I've done and things I've tested, I just saw this, okay, I want to help businesses make really, really good high five cultures and just teach and kind of counsel on everything that I've accumulated during these years. And then also apply it in the podcast where I share mindsets and things that I observe that, okay, how can two people go through similar things, but the way they think about life and themselves is what makes one succeed in and have a positive outlook, and the other one is kind of always in a rut. So the High Five Culture Lab is my newest creation, newest business that I'm putting into life now.
I love it, and I'm feeling the excitement and energy. So thank you so much for today, and let's give a big high five. I love the very short high. Yeah. Thank you for today, Tonje.
Thank you, Taya.
Thank you for sharing.
It's very nice to be here.
Brilliant.